Never let a good disaster go to waste. A remarkable true story of finding courage and contentment within chaos. Written and read by Kat Finnerty. Dedication. To my father for not drowning me. To my mother for saving me. To my children for teaching me. To my siblings for their unconditional love. To my husband for betraying me. To Alex for his infinite patience. To my spiritual teachers for guiding me out of suffering. And finally, to all of my catastrophes, thank you for showing me why I should never let a good disaster go to waste. This memoir is my interpretation of the events that have occurred in my life. As such, I have taken the liberty of making some minor tweaks, changes, and additions to enhance flow, timelines, dialogue, and storylines. Some names and places have been changed for privacy purposes. Never let a good disaster go to waste. My story is cut with raw edges, questionable choices, and destructive behaviors. It also features a radical transformation and a shift in perception that saved my life and placed peace in my heart. Never let a good disaster go to waste. Chapter 1. Curiosity killed the cat. You can choose to suffer for 12 hours, 12 days, 12 years, or a lifetime. I chose 12 hours. Kat Finnerty. I'm sitting on my bedroom floor, numb and in shock. It's been 10 hours since I was lying on an operating table in Melbourne's Alfred Hospital. Trevor's words are reverberating inside my head. It's over. I'm leaving you. I love her. Imagine for your 40th birthday, instead of breakfast in bed and cuddles from your kids, you're about to be wheeled into an operating room, a human guinea pig for a controversial and risky medical experiment. The procedure involved inserting a thin catheter into my thigh and threading it carefully through my body and up into my neck. There, a tiny balloon would be inflated to expand my jugular and increase blood flow from my brain to my body. It was September 2012. Melbourne was just coming out of a harsh winter. Julia Gillard was making history as Australia's first female Prime Minister. And I had been battling a crippling illness for almost half my life. According to my doctors, I should have been confined to a wheelchair by now. But amazingly, I'd been in remission for around 5 years, thanks to my unrelenting efforts to find a cure for my incurable disease. I was still far from what most people would consider normal. Countless attacks over the years had left their hidden internal scars on me, and the chance of a relapse and the threat of permanent disability perpetually hung over my head like a guillotine. Hence, why I'd thrown my hat into the ring to be part of the research trial. I felt my mobile vibrating on the bed next to me. It was my 10-year-old daughter, Stella. "Morning, Mummy," she chimed in her sing-song voice. My heart warmed. Stella proceeded to sing me happy birthday, then excitedly announced, "And guess what, Mummy?" "Yes, darling?" "Talia slept over in your bed last night." "Oh, really?" "Yeah, Daddy slept on the couch." I hesitated as I tried to process this. "Of course he did. Have a great day at school, honey. Love you." My hand holding the phone trembled slightly as I forced out a cheerful goodbye. I should have seen it coming. Major disasters always happen on my birthday. Death, incredible pain, disease. I've come to the realization that it's all part of this game we call life. You know how curiosity killed the cat? Well, I was the cat, and I was well on my way to using up every single one of my 9 lives. I had spent decades dealing with my disasters and figuring out how to transform them into opportunities. Yet, here I was, once again, peering down the rabbit hole, wondering whether this was the start of a new catastrophe or simply a colossal misunderstanding. A nurse took me through the swinging doors into the brightly lit operating theater. Sensing my unease, she leaned over and patted my hand. "Don't you worry, love. You'll be just fine." She had no idea the scalpel was the least of my worries. She continued to reassure me as she pushed me into the theater. And then, oh my God, everything was not fine. There, smiling at me, were two of the hottest male nurses I'd ever seen, their green scrubs nearly ripping apart over their bulging biceps. And here I was, embarrassingly attired in an unflattering blue hairnet and a hideous hospital gown. The two nurses helped me ever so gently from the gurney onto the table, while in the background, Carly Rae Jepsen sang suggestively, "Call Me Maybe," through the overhead speakers. "Hi, I'm Jared. You're in safe hands." "And I'm Brad. Let's get you comfortable." I thought I could quite possibly die happily right then and there. That's when I spotted the yellow plastic razor sitting on the metal tray next to me. I was mortified. Oh, sweet Jesus! One of these Adonises is about to perform bush maintenance on my nether regions. Nurse Jared followed my gaze, and with a sympathetic grin assured me, "Don't you worry, darling. I'll wait until you're well out of it before using that." I turned and pleaded to the man sitting to my left. "I think I need you." The anesthetist chuckled as he depressed the syringe. "Here comes the gin, and here comes the juice." I mercifully drifted off, relieved to be oblivious to whatever they were about to do to me. When I finally came around, all I could think about was the phone conversation with my daughter. It played over and over again in my head. I needed to check out of the hospital ASAP and figure what the hell was going on at home. And apparently, I needed to change my sheets. A woman wearing a familiar-looking blue hairnet pulled back the curtain and set down a tray of food in front of me. I removed the bread, making a sandwich of middles, and drank lukewarm tea from a rose-colored plastic mug. After getting dressed, I sat on the edge of my bed and gingerly picked at the tape holding the cannula in place. I buzzed for the nurse, who appeared at my bedside, looking perplexed. Likely because I was dressed, my bed was made, and my bag was packed. She frowned. "Everything okay here?" "Yes, I'm feeling perfectly fine," I explained apologetically. "But my sister had to come early to pick me up. Her daughter was vomiting at school. They're downstairs waiting for me. I'm sorry, but I need to leave. Could you please take the needle out of my arm?" I crossed my fingers behind my back, hoping she wouldn't guess I was fibbing. "I'll ask the doctor, but you're meant to be here for another 3 hours." "I know, but honestly, I feel fine, and my sister's a nurse. She'll be with me the entire day." Oh dear, lie number 2. But it sufficed to secure my early release. As I began the 4-hour drive through the traffic of Melbourne, heading north to the country, I was grateful for my uncanny ability to breeze through anesthesia and recover rapidly. After all, I was no novice at this game. I tried listening to podcasts to pass the time, but was far too distracted. A big knot had tied itself in my stomach, and finally, it got the better of me. I worked up the courage to call Talia. She answered on the first ring. "Happy birthday, Kat! How'd you go?" "I'm fine, other than my neck feeling like someone shoved a stick up inside of it." I hesitated before launching into my next question. "Hey, I spoke to Stella this morning and she told me you had a sleepover last night." "Oh, yeah. You wouldn't believe it," she laughed. "I popped in to say hi to Trev and the kids, and we had a few too many wines. I got up to leave, then tripped over the ottoman and thought, I better not drive." "Really? You only live 800 meters away. You couldn't have hit something if you tried. Do you really think it was a good idea to sleep at my house? In my bed?" At least that's what I wanted to say. But then it occurred to me that at some point in my life, I may have committed a similar drunken escapade. My memory had a habit of being advantageously selective. Instead, I blurted out, "Did you sleep well?" Oh, good grief, I sound like a hotel concierge. Uh, yeah, okay, I guess, but my head isn't great today. Hey, I still want to take you out for your birthday lunch. What day works for you? Thanks, Tal. But let's go for a walk tomorrow instead. Eating in the middle of the day involves devouring too many calories and too much sitting. I hope your head feels better soon, I added, attempting to sound sincere. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of your birthday. I'll see you tomorrow. The knot began to unravel. Her explanation seemed plausible, and she sounded perfectly normal on the phone. Plus, she was a good friend who often dropped by. I concluded that being too drunk to drive was a perfectly valid excuse for a sleepover. The city slowly began to melt away, to be replaced by endless green paddocks, leaving me with plenty of time to mull over my marriage and my life. Trevor and I had been married for 14 years, and we were happy. Well, except for all the times when we weren't, but we'd worked our way through most of our troubles. For an early 40th birthday present, Trevor surprised me by hiring a marquee for the annual local races and inviting all of our friends and his family along for the celebration. Our hectic family life was also becoming easier, thanks to the fact our 3 kids had nearly finished primary school. We were financially secure and looking forward to embarking on the next phase of our lives, which I fervently hoped would entail leaving drudgery. Everything seemed to be sailing along smoothly. A few hours later, I received a text from my husband. It simply read, "Happy birthday, old girl," followed by one party popper emoji, no love hearts, no X's, no O's. I made it home just before dusk and was greeted by one of those spectacular Aussie outback sunsets that seemed to go on forever. It was a small consolation for living on the flat plains of drudgery, where the view of the horizon stretched unobstructed for hundreds of kilometers. Soon, I'd be greeted with an equally spectacular moonrise. As I walked into the house, I was greeted by Trevor dashing out the door with our daughter in tow. "Hey, you're home early. We'll be right back. We haven't fed Belle yet." Belle was Stell's horse, who was adjusted on a property at the edge of town. I went to the kitchen. On the table were remnants of their dinner. And Trevor's phone. In his haste, he'd forgotten to take it. I couldn't believe my luck. I grabbed the phone, along with a half-eaten chicken drumstick, and made my way to our bedroom. I started scrolling through his messages, absent-mindedly chewing on what was left of the meat, thinking I had nothing to worry about. That is, until I saw the messages between my husband and Talia. Time lurched to a halt. I gasped, nearly choking on the chicken. Their exchange was so explicit. I wondered if they were submitting a short story to an adult-only magazine. The text left very little to the imagination. There were also messages about how they would soon be living together on a beach, with screenshots of glowing ocean sunsets. My heart began pounding as a nauseating raw panic overwhelmed me. "Oh my God," I screamed. "They're planning to escape drudgery and leave me here." It seemed the person I'd vowed to be true to, in good times and bad, for better or for worse, the person I would have taken a bullet for, was the one standing behind the gun pulling the trigger. It soon became clear that some of our friends, and even Trev's family, were aware of the affair. One message mentioned how delighted his father was to see them so happy together. My broken heart shattered all over again. I had never felt so betrayed. I adored his parents and even invited them on our honeymoon. Being deceived by my husband was devastating, but being betrayed by a family I cherished and loved like my own was soul-destroying. Trust. Years to build, seconds to break. How true. I slid from the corner of the bed to the floor with a thud. It felt as if someone had punched me in the stomach. I couldn't breathe. My heart raced, and my thoughts imploded. Fear, grief, pain, and rage tore through me and shredded me to the core. I didn't know whether to scream or curl into a ball and disappear forever. I violently threw the drumstick against the wall. It bounced onto the carpet, leaving behind a large, greasy stain. Great. Another mess to clean up. I opened the neck of my shirt and tried to slow my breathing as sweat dripped down my back. The whole scenario felt like a nightmare, except it was all too real. My mind was desperately grasping at straws as I tried to make sense of what I'd just discovered. There had to be a way of saving my marriage, my family, my life. It was then I heard his car pull up. Unable to move, paralyzed by fear, I sat on the carpet, waiting. The front door opened and Stella yelled, "Hey, Mom, we're back!" Trevor's heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. I wondered if he realized he'd left his phone behind yet. When he passed the open door to our bedroom, he glanced in and paused as he took in the scene. I lay slumped against the bed like a rag doll, clutching his phone to my heart. I looked up. Our eyes connected, and in that moment he knew that I knew. In silence, he walked towards me, crouched down and prized his phone from my hands. "It's over. I'm leaving you. I love her," he stated with steely finality. I didn't know what to expect, but it definitely wasn't this. Perhaps an apology, maybe a few excuses, a sorrowful admittance of his betrayal. Instead, I was served a brutal final statement of his love for another woman and the resounding slam of the front door as he left. So this was how it ended? A cliched scene from an episode of the Jerry Springer Show? After 14 years of marriage and 3 kids? The irony of the situation rocked me. We lived in a town so boring, I jokingly called it drudgery, never by its true name, which was marginally less interesting. Nothing exciting had happened here since the Kelly gang arrived 140 years ago and robbed the bank. Scandals like this didn't happen to me, to my family, to this town. But now, of course, it had. Most hurtful was my mother-in-law's involvement in the whole sordid affair. She'd been like a mother to me. I loved her and thought the feeling was mutual. She often referred to me as her 4th daughter. As bad as it was having my husband admit he loved another woman, it didn't even begin to compare to the pain of her deception. This was apocalyptic. My belly churned as I dialed her number. She answered cheerfully. "Hi, love. How are you?" "Rosie, I know." Emotions overwhelmed me as I choked to a halt. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I wanted to speak to you, to tell you, but I just couldn't. Are you okay?" "No," I said shakily. "I'm not okay." My world had just fallen apart, and the woman who I adored for 15 years had just admitted she'd known about the affair. Silence. A long pause. I could hear my mother-in-law attempting to hold back a sob. "Kat, you know I love you. Everything will be okay. I'll come and see you first thing tomorrow." I breathed a small sigh of relief and said goodbye. For now it seemed there was one less knife buried in my back. I crawled over and picked up the chicken bone, rose to my feet and staggered down the corridor to my favorite room in the house, the kitchen. For once, I was grateful for the handheld technology that kept my daughter happily ensconced in her room. Tonight, I had a much bigger problem to deal with than a Snapchat addiction. My nails dug into the counter as I looked up and silently screamed, "What now?" When the universe didn't reply, I did the only thing I could in an emergency situation. I gathered together the Holy Trinity: chocolate, chips, and wine. What ensued next was a battle of wills. A fierce stare down with the unopened bottle of Merlot, a bar of lint, and a bag of Ruffles. I swept them aside. Self-sabotage would not be the answer to this disaster. Kat, you've studied Buddhism, meditation, and yoga for over a decade. You've dealt with death, disability, and disease. You've attended countless courses and studied innumerable texts about finding happiness. You've got this. And somehow, as I uttered the words, I started to feel as if maybe, just maybe, I did. Throughout my life, I've endured dozens of disasters. Each time, I've endeavored to rationalize the situation by telling myself, this hasn't happened to me, it's happened for me, and that these were the lessons I needed to learn. However, this last disaster seemed truly catastrophic. Transcending it was going to be a huge task, even with my unique life history. I returned to my bedroom and gave myself a stern talking to. Come on, girl. You can do this, even without booze. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So take the damn step. I stepped. I started by thinking about my cat. Yes, I know, a strange place to begin looking for enlightenment. But in addition to being curious, intelligent, and independent, cats have an innate righting reflex, an ability to twist around in midair while falling and land on all fours. It's partly why they are gifted with the myth of 9 lives. I figured what I really need to do was to be more cat-like, or maybe cat-like, by somehow finding a way to flip the situation into something good using my own righting reflex. As the darkest hours of the night ticked by, that's exactly what I did. I began comparing and analyzing my current situation to all my past disasters, using the wisdom I collected over my 40 years to put everything into perspective. It wasn't easy. Heavy waves of sadness kept crashing over me, dragging me down into a whirlpool of fear, anger, loss, and grief. And each time I struggled back up to the surface, my mind would gasp for a breath of calming air. It wasn't easy. Heavy waves of sadness kept crashing over me, dragging me down into a whirlpool of fear, anger, loss, and grief. And each time I struggled back up to the surface, my mind would gasp for a breath of calming air. With a supreme effort of willpower, I forced myself to mentally tread water and refocus on the bigger picture, ignoring the turbulence around me. All that pain you've endured, everything you've overcome, don't let it go to waste, Kat. Don't let any of your disasters go to waste, especially this one. There's a lesson hidden within this adversity. Your mission is to find it. And just like the jigsaw puzzles I used to do as a kid, the pieces started slotting into place. It was an empowering experience. I felt like Jamal in Slumdog Millionaire, only instead of winning a game show and a bucket load of cash, the universe was miraculously conspiring to help me find the answers I was searching for and win at the game of life. Sometime, much later, I noticed the sky starting to brighten outside. Confirmation that I'd made it through the darkness and into the light. Gazing at the empty space where Trevor usually slept, I found I was wistful, but not heart-achingly sad. Hope had sprouted in my heart, and its powerful tendrils were slowly pushing out the anger and agony that had resided there just 12 hours earlier. I was no longer a devastated mess, thanks to the fact I'd asked myself over and over again, how long are you going to choose to suffer? A new day was beginning. A new door was opening, and I wondered what the next chapter of my life held in store. As if on cue, a shaft of sunlight peeked over the horizon and illuminated my bedroom in a brilliant golden glow. I smiled. The universe had finally answered me.